My name's Otto Kamensek, or Kamensek, if some people that own me for a little longer. But I'm here to give a talk on art and arthritis. This is one of my, a piece that I did a few years ago. I call it the Arthritis Blues because I thought, you know, I don't know if there's any blues songs around arthritis, but there sure should be. And some people probably heard this already, but somebody asked me, well, why are you calling it the Arthritis Blues? Like, well, don't you see the harmonica in his hand? He goes, harmonica? I thought that was a cell phone. So we had, you know, things have changed over the last 30 years or 20 years. But, so I'm gonna give this talk, and hopefully, for my first talk, I talked about influences. Then I'll start talking about the art and how later on I fused the two together with the art and arthritis. And this is actually probably one of my first pieces that I did health related. It's called Chronic Disease. I wanted to call it rheumatoid arthritis at first, and I thought that would be kind of excluding a lot of the other health groups out there within arthritis. So I called it Chronic Disease. And then what surprised me was that people with cancer came up to me and said they understood this piece and it really touched them. So I made it broader, and obviously people felt something with it. And there's something, when you feel that kind of connection with people, it's a wonderful thing. So the next slide, and then of course questions. So I put this picture in because I had a new experience just recently, and a bad one in some ways. My father passed away about a year ago, and the picture in the corner there is by Fred Herzog, who came to Canada in the early 50s, 1950s, about the same time my father did. And he took photographs of the city. And talking to my father in the last months or so, he said he wanted to get away from Europe as far as he could. And he came here and he said this place was so different than Europe. And Herzog took photographs of the 50s. And now I can see, I have a new connection with Herzog just because I can see what my father saw with his eyes. And that's kind of special. It's a different way I've connected with art, which I haven't done before. So some of the things that influenced me in the past were realism, mostly Greek and Roman sculpture. I was just blown away by what the artists did at that time, you know, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. I just couldn't believe it. So I was really interested in realism for a long time. And then surrealism caught me because it was about the dreamscape and you know, the craziness of your dreams. And living with this disease is, you know, people may look at you, but they don't see you. But with surrealism, it makes it much bigger than it is. You can take it into a dreamscape that you can explain things to people. Post-impressionism, mostly, there's a lot of painters, I won't get into it, but Toulouse-Lautrec was somebody that I gravitated to. He was a little person, and maybe that's why I gravitate to him. And then contemporary ceramics, currently there's a few that are special to me. Paul Day is one of them. He kind of mixes figurative work with architectural type work, and he does beautiful things. So the next slide, please. So the early years, so my disease. I was diagnosed when I was 9 with what they called then juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. It's now called juvenile idiopathic arthritis. And within that group, for children, there's 5 subclasses. And the subclass that I'm in is called systemic. And there's about 20% of that population, which happens to be the most aggressive and you know, the most worst outcome for people with that disease. Hopefully that'll change. There are about 4,000 children in BC with some form of rheumatoid arthritis. So in every school, some child has it. One study back many years ago was quite shocking to me that I think it was from 1967 to 1987. And they studied children over that period of time, predominantly females, because that's who typically get it. Over that period of time, 33% of them had passed away. Another 33% of them were bedridden, and another 33% were very well very disabled, or they have many complications. So that shocked me because I was diagnosed in '74. So I'm in one of those classes. Today, that's much different. So my joint involvement is from my jaw to my toes. And once the inflammatory arthritis is gone, then I have to deal with the aftermath of osteoarthritis. So I have basically two different types of arthritis. And when I got it in 1974, I called it the Stone Age of arthritis care for me, because first treatment was 14 aspirin a day, which pretty much blows a hole in your stomach, right? But the paradigm was different. You tried the least offensive drugs first, and you go up the ladder. The problem with that is if your disease is very active, you can have joint damage within 3 months if your joint is constantly swollen. So if you take 6 months to find out if a disease works or medication works or not, each time it could be many years before you're getting benefit. The paradigm or the pyramid is upside down now. They'll try and control the disease right away. So family was important. My mother and father were, doing all kinds of things for me. And now as I'm older, I appreciate it a lot more. And I had to get an education on it, and GF Strong was probably the best place, and or my physiotherapist, because you never get enough time with your doctor, as you probably know. So the social things that can happen to you, it changes your family dynamic. My mother was basically my primary caregiver when I was growing up. Dad was working to support the family. Today, with our structures, it might be a lot tougher for families to cope in this way, because one parent can't always stay at home. So there's a grieving process. I remember being depressed for a year, just sitting and watching TV. I didn't know what depression was, but I didn't do nothing. Didn't want to see my friends, didn't want to do anything. So I knew that I went through that, and through that, I lost friends. Not necessarily, partly because I didn't want to see them, and partly because I couldn't do the same things as they did anymore. And back then I was very active. I was playing soccer. I'd on my bicycle every day. I was very physically active and very strong for my age. And that changed drastically. So you have a loss of status too. I was a very good soccer player. And you used to always get picked at the beginning of the class when you're picking players. Now I was getting picked last. It was a very, a loss of identity because of that. I wasn't sure. Well, who am I? It took me a long time to sort of rebuild my personality. And that's where we go, transition of loss. So that I had to become who I am. And I just had sort of a breakthrough last time when I was giving my last talk, that up to grade 3, which is when I got sick, and I can't remember if I was leaning towards being an artist, but after grade 3, I remember people in my class telling me, oh yeah, Otto's really good at art. So I don't know if that was my internal thing at that time, or did I have it before, but it was kind of interesting to me. Then I thought, starving artist, Mom and Dad want me out of the house sooner or later, right? So I gave it up. I just threw it away like it was garbage, and that was a big mistake. Art to me is like missing a friend. My life became so much sweeter once I came back to it, even if it's only a little bit. So this is like a little maquette, a little study. Remember that very first picture of the staircase? I think this is my first attempt. I was going, I want to do something like that, but I didn't know what I was doing, or I was trying to feel my way through it. So for me, I have a specific process that I work with now. I usually have an idea. I sketch it in a book someplace, and I work with the idea a bit there. Then I make a study or a maquette like this, and then I try and make a finished product. Doesn't always work that way, though. Not to say that that's the only way to do art. It's not. You can do it with no idea, no sketch, no study, and there's no right or wrong. Because I always hear about, the art with a capital A and art with a small a, and they're saying that big A is better and the little a isn't. I think it's whatever gravitates to you and speaks to you, I think, is worthwhile. So this is some of the process of the stairs that I was doing. I was trying to put chains on his ankles, so he couldn't get up the stairs. But really what you see the chains on this one here on the side. It's called sgraffito, where the clay is red, you put black slip on it, and then you cut into it. I just wanted to cut into it, but it didn't work with the piece. It was clouding it up. So next slide, please. So this is the final product with the shadow, and it's a long day and you're not getting where you want to go. So I called it chronic disease, as for the reasons I mentioned earlier. I talked about the first steps, thinking about it, and can I do it justice? The studies, what do I call it? And then what I mentioned earlier, that other disease groups came and were, they identified with the piece. And that to me was the greatest gift ever. That you can speak another language with somebody else without even saying something. Next slide, please. So I didn't start there. I had to start someplace else. So I reel it back 4 or 5 years, and there's one of my first boxes on the left. And so first piece I ended up selling for $60, I think. Not that I sell a lot of my work. The next is a tree box that I made a long time ago. Next slide, please. Then I did a show on gestures, and I made a little hand, and this guy's Chester. Somebody said he looked like a mass murderer. I think that was you, Judy. Where are you? Causing trouble all the time. Next slide. I ended up winning a second prize with my friend Gary. We collaborated on the piece on the left. That's called Joan of Art. They have a wearable art show here. I think it's not every year anymore. I think it's every other year. And they have people from all over the world, in some cases, send their work in. So Gary and I were very lucky to have come in with a second place finishing on that. And then getting back to the figurative work, this is the yawn at the dentist. He's had a lot of fun with him. Next slide, please. So this is another piece that I did. This is the piece that sort of pushed me over the edge of whether I should do work, more work for arthritis, or with arthritis. So what I tried to do is show the pain, what types, body changes. It's basically a journal of where I've had pain and what kind of pain I've had over the last 30 plus years. And then I talk about the struggles, about do I want to do this? Because firstly, it's very personal. You know, that's why you will see in the next slide, he's naked. Basically, you're putting yourself out there. And you can see the different types of pain that he has there. He's got old, rusty pain. And he's got sharp pain, which is partly the needles. His hands are swollen. He's had knee replacement, so that's the scars on his knees and on his hips. And there's, nails that have been melted down for that festering pain that sort of lasts forever kind of thing. So I tried to, and this picture, I was shocked at the response of a group. I shouldn't say shocked, but surprised. I gave a talk to a group of people with arthritis, and I couldn't see because there was 150 people in the room, but people came up to me and afterwards and said that there was a lot of teared up eyes in the room. And that wasn't my intent to do that. My intent was just to give people that don't have the problem a bit of an understanding of what it may be like to have it. And some people can't even look at it. One woman that I know at that conference that I went to, she couldn't even look at it. It cut too close to the bone, so to speak. No pun intended. So these are maquettes that I started to do. These are my little pieces, the little studies. I love this little guy. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with him yet, but I'm going to try and do something with his body language. Next slide, please. Back to the arthritis leaning. These are from my female friends who have rheumatoid arthritis. It's hard to tell here, but that is a heel on the end of a foot, or on the heel of a foot. And the toes are all somebody who has arthritis, bad arthritis. And they can't wear their high-heeled shoes anymore, and they say it takes a part of their femininity or their sexuality away, and I just wanted to to let people know that, that's how they feel. And the next is a still life that I'm playing with. In the last talk that I gave, I talked about the still life work that the Flemish painters did, where they would take, at that time there was wealthy people that wanted portraits done. Well, they wouldn't do it on themselves. They would do a table, and then they would put all the things in their life that was important. If they were a sailor, or if they were a military person, there'd be a sword and a pistol. And basically, it was a way of showing your status within the community. This is my arthritis table. With my cane, my raised chair. Can't see it, but these are shoes with orthotics in them. That cascading thing that's coming off the table are pills that I've been taking over the years, just hundreds, well, maybe thousands over the years. There's a syringe there for the needles that I had to take, and pill bottles, and little things that you wrap around your ankles for weights to do exercise with. So that's another one. I'm going to put a little vase on there that's going to be bright color with one flower coming out, and that'll be the hope within that picture. Everything else will be black and white. This is a piece that is based on biblical story, David and Goliath. It's sort of my political piece, if you want to call it that. But I call it Dorothy and Goliath. It's a woman who's been living with rheumatoid arthritis for a long time, and she's fed up. And the reason she's fed up, there was a study done, I don't know if it was a study or some kind of, they felt it out, and they figured out that per person in Canada, the government hands out about 93 cents for arthritis research. Cancer and AIDS, for instance, get close to $1,000 or over $1,000 per person. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them getting that much, but there's an inequality there. And she's PO'd about that. She's PO'd about the inequality. So that head is a bureaucrat who's holding on to the purse strings. So that's my political piece. I'd love to get that one done. This is called homunculus. It's a tool that the rheumatologists use for diagnosing rheumatoid and different types of arthritis. So what it is typically is on a piece of paper, flat piece of paper, and what they'll do is they'll go around and palpate or touch your joints to find out which ones are inflamed or sore, and then they put a little mark. So if the index finger here, a little mark. I notice now that I made a mistake on this piece because his thumbs are on the same side. That's why it's a maquette or a study. So I'm doing that piece. And this is the next piece is I wanted to do all the different findings in your hand, the different problems with the disease process that you can probably see my hands don't look normal. But I wanted to do that and show that. So this is a small maquette. The life size is going to be about 25 inches high. It's very large. It's larger than life. And that's how I feel it is. It expresses a larger than life issues. Next slide, please. So this is the larger than life piece. It's hard to tell. Excuse me, it's hard to tell. I don't want to give everything away here. Otherwise, you'll never see anything downstairs. So this is a little peekaboo kind of bit here. But you can see on the thumb on the left, on that left picture, that there's all this, skin hanging, and that's partly because of the muscle wasting that starts to go on when your joints don't work properly. The muscle belly, as they call it there, starts to disappear, and then you get these weird wrinkles in weird places. And I tried to put the lettering into it. This is my fatigue piece. One of the things that rarely gets talked about, or maybe not rarely, but used to be rarely get talked about, was the aspect of the fatigue that comes along with living with this problem. And it just, I don't know how I can explain it other than it's like having a really bad cold and it just doesn't go away. And it shows up whenever you don't want it. You might have plans. No, can't do it today. don't have the energy, or you're looking around the house going, that needs to be cleaned up. Do I do it today? Nah, tomorrow. Mañana. But I tried to express what it would feel like. You're melting into the ground, the hands are way too big, they're just dragging behind you. So this is the maquette. Now it's not quite finished yet, but this is the piece that I'm working on. It'll be probably about 36 inches in height when it's finished. So it'll be quite big. But I'm trying to portray this feeling of heaviness and tired. And you'll get to see that downstairs. I am sorry about this picture. My favorite guy here got his head chopped off. This is Hank. And I just love his grin. Lily was good enough to bring in a picture of this character, and I blew it up even more. Made the mouth really big. But questions, and I wanted to thank the Port Moody Arts Centre for giving me this opportunity, and the Arthritis Research Centre as well for all the years that they've stood beside me and helped me and prodded me along in other areas, pushed me in other directions.